Veronica Miller slammed the door to her room with all her strength. She was furious with her father. Veronica was almost 21. She was a senior in a prestigious business program. And by the way, she had gotten in on her own. Her father had offered to use his connections to help her, and he had serious connections. But Veronica had been sure of herself and had done everything without him. She had even passed the important entrance interview the university required of prospective students. A lot had depended on that interview, but Veronica had handled it with dignity, even though at first she had thought she had failed. She had been nervous. She had mixed up a few terms and concepts. She had not immediately come up with examples. Still, they accepted her. Her father was thrilled and gave his brilliant daughter an entire condo. Veronica was happy. True, her father had set one condition. She would live separately a little later, when she was older. Back then, Veronica had agreed easily. She did not really want to move out of her parents' house yet, but she threw herself into furnishing the condo with joy. It felt so good to buy furniture for a new home, choose finishes, and think through the interior design. Ideas, each one better than the last, came to her at dizzying speed. Inspiration never left Veronica alone. Once again, she refused her father's offer to hire a professional designer. It was her own condo, and such a spacious, bright one, with a stunning view of the lively riverfront downtown. She wanted to furnish it herself. Her father did not argue. Sometimes he only smiled at the unexpected design choices that came into his daughter's head. He openly admired her ideas. "Maybe you picked the wrong profession," Victor Miller would say, shaking his head. "Look at you, so creative. You would have made an excellent designer." Veronica liked her father's praise, but she was 100% sure about her major. She had known since early childhood what she wanted to do. She dreamed of becoming her father's right hand, helping him run his restaurant business, and then, when the time came, taking the baton from him. That was why she had chosen business and economics. In general, Veronica absolutely adored her father. Even though he was a busy businessman, he always found time to be with his daughter. As a child, Nikki had not appreciated it. She had taken it for granted. But as she grew older, she understood and rethought a lot of things. Her father was always present at her birthdays, even when he was away on a long business trip. He always flew home so he could congratulate his daughter in person, not over a video call. He spoiled her, but not by buying her off with gifts. He truly spoiled her. He did not just buy her the most expensive gadget or a designer outfit. No, like no one else, he knew exactly what his only dearly loved daughter dreamed about. It was her father who gave Nikki, for her 8th birthday, a huge 2-story castle cage with hamsters. It was he who somehow found a collector's edition of a fantasy saga when a slightly older Veronica became obsessed with those books. And not just any edition, either. It had the author's signature. Victor Miller spared nothing for his daughter. Of course, Veronica loved her mother, too. Her mother, Linda, was anxious and a little nervous. She was very afraid for her daughter, always afraid of losing her. Even the slightest cold would almost send Linda into a panic. As far back as Nikki could remember, she had always felt sorry for her mother and tried to take care of her. If something happened in Veronica's life, an illness, a problem, or simply some unpleasant event, she did not talk to her mother about it because Linda took everything too close to heart, and there were reasons for that. Veronica did not remember it, but she knew perfectly well what had happened to her as a child. Yes, Veronica loved her mother, cared about her, and tried to help her with everything. But her truly warm, friendly relationship was with her father. With him, she could laugh and act silly. Together they tried slightly extreme activities. Indoor skydiving, riding ATVs over hilly trails, and adventures like that. They both loved it. They also both loved fishing, football, and loud, active games. Linda could only gasp when she found out about the latest idea her 2 closest people had cooked up. Usually, she found out after the fact. Neither Veronica nor Victor wanted to worry her in advance. Veronica never understood how her parents, who were so different, had ever met and fallen in love. She knew it had happened many years earlier. Her mother had come to work at the first restaurant her father opened. He had been young then, still an inexperienced businessman. She had just graduated with a business degree. "Your mother helped us so much back then," Victor once told his daughter. She noticed things and gave advice, even though she was still a green graduate. But talent is either there or it isn't. I don't know what we would have done without her. He often shared memories like that with his daughter. They frequently talked about that period of his life. And Veronica was always interested in the stories of how her father's business empire had begun. That, probably, was why the young beginning businessman first noted his new, even younger employee. She was very smart and had something close to instinct. Then the young man looked more closely at her and realized she was beautiful, kind, caring, and also very brave and cheerful. Yes, your mother was very brave," Victor would say with a smile. He always smiled when his thoughts carried him back into that past. "She and I went skiing in the mountains, and she was the one pushing me to be bolder. She used to jump into the ocean from those really high platforms. I refused to even climb up there, and your mother acted like it was nothing." The many bright photographs from those years proved that her father was telling the truth. Her mother had been a beautiful, slender young woman with a direct, determined gaze. "You know, what happened to you many years ago changed your mother a lot," Victor once said. "You know that. Back then, she suddenly understood something she had not really thought about before. She understood she could lose you, and now she is the way she is." Veronica knew that too. She did not remember the period when she had been seriously ill. Sometimes something vague seemed to surface in her memory. Fear, pain, white hospital corridors, her mother crying. Nothing specific. But from her parents' words, Nikki knew everything. When she was still just a baby, not even 1 year old, she was given a terrible diagnosis. It sounded like a sentence, especially back then. Later, doctors became more successful at treating illnesses like that. Though even now, survival rates for patients with similar diagnoses remained frighteningly low. Her mother never spoke to her daughter about that subject. "No, Nikki, don't even ask. It's too hard." Her father did not like returning to that part of the past either. Still, it was from him that Veronica learned what had happened to her. It was an aggressive, rapidly progressing blood disease. There was no effective treatment. The doctors spread their hands and made no promises. The statistics said there was little reason to hope for anything good. And then the real fight began. Nikki was shown to every doctor who worked with diseases like hers. Her father turned to old, respected professors and young medical innovators alike. Back then, he was not yet so well off or rich. His business was only just beginning to bring in a more or less serious income. But the young, desperate father borrowed money, took out loans, reached out to foundations, and was ready to forget pride and shame and stand in a subway station with his hand out, if only it would pull his daughter back from the edge. "Nothing worked," Victor said, shaking his head when he told his daughter that story. "You were fading right before our eyes. It was hard to watch, very hard. But I knew that if there was even one chance in a billion, I would save you." One day, someone told Victor about old Miss Kathy, who lived in a remote little town about 60 miles away. People said she worked real miracles and literally put people back on their feet. The only thing was, she could not help everyone. No one knew what it depended on. With some patients, she simply spread her hands and said there was nothing she could do. With others suffering the same illness, she healed them in 5 minutes. The same day the young father heard about that miraculous old woman, he went to the hospital and took his daughter, though the doctors did not want to release her even for a few hours. There was a long line for Miss Kathy, with appointments booked weeks ahead. But Victor did not even think about that. He simply came. He forced his way in. If he was being completely honest, he bought someone's place in line. "Well, the old woman looked at you and smiled, so warmly," Victor told her. "And you smiled back at her, even though you were already weak and crying almost all the time. She stroked your head, whispered something, and that was it. After that, you began to recover. To this day, I don't know whether it was a coincidence or a real miracle." The doctors believed the new treatment plan they had recently chosen finally gave that result. Several dissertations were even written about your case later. "And what do you think?" Veronica had asked her father that question more than once. Did the wise old woman save me, or was it the new medicine? Victor Miller always smiled and shrugged in response. He never admitted it, but Nikki could almost read his thoughts. Of course, she saw that her father believed more in Miss Kathy's healing than in anything else. One way or another, the little girl began to recover. Soon, her test results returned completely to normal. Then came a long rehabilitation and the gradual withdrawal of medications. The girl's condition was carefully monitored, but everything suggested that the illness had retreated forever, finally and irreversibly. True, her mother still did not believe in that forever and irreversibly. At first, even the doctors had not believed it. The girl was examined carefully several times a year, but everything was fine. Now Veronica was a completely healthy, beautiful young woman. Her father often teased his wife about her fears, trying to lighten the mood. At the same time, he understood her perfectly and supported her as best he could, so she would not disappear completely into her anxiety and fear. He was kind, cheerful, and caring. He was Nikki's father. Veronica loved him with all her soul and knew he would do anything for her. He would even take a star down from the sky if he had to. But in this situation with Ethan, her father was clearly going too far. Right now, Veronica did not even want to keep talking to him. She had gone into her room and slammed the door loudly, trying to demonstrate her outrage as vividly as possible. She had never done anything like that, not even in her teenage years, and all because her father had suddenly forgotten that Veronica was no longer a little girl. She was an adult who had proven her independence more than once. She was a person fully capable of making a serious decision without looking back at her parents' opinions. After all, she would soon be 21. Even the law was on her side. Veronica was free to decide for herself when and whom she would marry. Of course, 6 months earlier she had not planned such a grand event. More than that, she had been focused on school and her career. She wanted to graduate from the university, work with her father, and maybe even do an internship somewhere overseas. Her parents had approved those plans. As long as their ideas for Veronica's future matched her own, everything had been fine. But 4 months ago, in a nightclub, Veronica met Ethan. And what a meeting it had been. Ethan had saved her from a drunk, pushy young man who had somehow decided that Veronica was supposed to leave the club with him. That drunk guy had acted very decisively, even aggressively. To be honest, he had nearly managed to drag Veronica out of the club. He was leading her away by force, holding her tightly against him, practically kidnapping her in front of everyone. Veronica's lungs were weak with terror. She could not even scream because something sharp was pressing into her ribs. The creep also threatened her in a hoarse voice, saying she had better not make a sound. There were so many people around, and nobody noticed anything. Not the girl's weak attempts to free herself, not her eyes, wide with horror. Veronica herself had overdone it a little, with alcohol that evening. Usually, she never allowed herself that, and even this time, it seemed she had not drunk much, only a couple of cocktails. But her head was spinning, and her legs felt cottony, as if she were deeply intoxicated. It was a strange feeling, and then that terrible situation happened. Already on the club's front steps, when the chances of a good outcome were almost non-existent because the crowd was being left behind, Nicky met his eyes. More precisely, he caught her gaze. "Miss, are you all right? Do you need help?" he asked Veronica. "Get lost. Can't you see she's my girlfriend?" The kidnapper answered rudely. Veronica could not utter a word. Her tongue would not obey her. She only shook her head, but Ethan understood everything. He approached the drunk guy quickly, firmly, and easily loosened his hands, which had seemed so strong to Veronica, like some kind of steel trap. The guy tried to resist, but Ethan, Nicky of course did not yet know her rescuer's name, delivered one quick blow. That was enough for Nicky's tormentor to understand what was happening, and somehow retreat without drawing attention. That was how quickly and easily Ethan saved Nicky. Just like in some movie, one of those Hollywood masterpieces Nicky adored. Ethan looked very much like the hero of a movie too. Tall, dark-eyed, just the right amount of rugged. And when he smiled, his eyes lit with a special light, and dimples appeared on his cheeks. Nicky fell in love with that smile at first sight. At that point, she knew absolutely nothing about Ethan, except that he was brave, strong, and noble enough not to walk past a girl who was clearly in trouble. When Ethan heard what had happened to Nicky, he wanted to immediately rush after the guy who had almost kidnapped her. You understand, he could pull that with someone else too. he explained to the girl, who had grabbed hold of him because she did not want to be alone right then. She still had not recovered from the horror she had survived. No, don't go. I don't want you to go. Ethan's eyes flashed with joy at those words. It was obvious right away that he liked what Veronica had said, and he did not leave. He stayed with her. First, they sat for a while right on the steps in front of the club. It was chilly. Nikki was shaking, whether from the cold or from the terror she had just lived through. Ethan draped his denim jacket over her shoulders and hugged her tightly to calm her trembling. They talked, learned about each other, and became better acquainted. Veronica learned that Ethan had come here from a distant, small town in a state she had never even heard of before. He was a couple of years older than Nikki, had already graduated from college, and had earned an engineering degree. He had not found work back home, so he had set out to look for a place and a future far away. "You won't believe it, but I ended up here completely by chance," he said. "When I got to the Greyhound station, the next bus leaving was headed this way, so that's how I came here. Honestly, I don't regret anything. I found a job at your steel plant. Engineers are in demand here. I got myself a room in a cheap residential hotel. Life is starting to come together." Veronica thought about that. Ethan had gone to the station and bought a ticket for the first bus leaving. It seemed as if some difficult circumstances had pushed him toward that decision. "It sounds like you were running away from your town," Veronica said, looking into the bottomless dark eyes of her new acquaintance, whom she did not want to part with at all. "Running from something, or someone. You're sharp, aren't you?" Ethan said with a grin. Nikki's heart squeezed sweetly at the way he spoke, as if she already belonged beside him, as if they were already a couple. And maybe that was exactly how it was. "So what happened to you back in your town?" "Nothing special," Ethan said with a shrug. "It just turned out there was nothing there holding me anymore." Ethan told her that his mother had raised him. He had never known his father. His mother preferred not to mention him. Seeing how unpleasant those conversations were for her, Ethan had not pressed her with unnecessary questions. His mother had worked several jobs to provide everything her only, dearly loved child needed. "Mom was exhausted, and I helped her," he said. "I even mopped floors in apartment buildings she cleaned as a side job. I did everything at home, but Mom always looked pale and tired. I dreamed that when I grew up, I would make her life happier, brighter. I would give her anything she wanted. I would take her to the ocean. Mom had never once seen the ocean. She dreamed so much about that trip, but it didn't happen." Ethan's mother died when he was finishing his last year of college. She kept growing paler, weaker, and thinner, but she did not go to doctors. She had no time. Then, when Ethan almost forced his dearest person to go to the hospital, it turned out to be too late. "It was my fault. I should have insisted earlier." Ethan lowered his eyes. It was clear that all of this caused him deep pain. Veronica squeezed his hand. She wanted to support him. "When my mom was gone, I was asked to leave the apartment." "By whom?" "Our many wonderful relatives who never helped Mom with anything, not once. They liked that she lived in my grandmother's apartment, paid the utilities, and took care of the place. When Mom died, they decided to sell it. My share turned out to be tiny. Still, it was enough for tickets and enough to live on until I found a job." "So you're alone in this world?" Veronica could not believe it. How could that be? Veronica herself had parents, her support, her wings, her safety net. And Ethan was not much older than she was, yet he was already alone. "Exactly," Ethan said with a nod. "Completely alone, though I hope I'm not completely alone anymore." And the guy smiled at the girl so radiantly that she could not help smiling back. A pleasant chill ran down her spine because of his words. Her heart tightened with some sweet anxiety. At that very moment, something clearly very important was happening. Something serious, and even grand. In short, they began dating. Ethan was very serious, and sometimes in him, in such a young man who was only a couple of years older than Veronica, a grown man would peek through. It looked both frightening and attractive at the same time. Veronica was never bored with Ethan. He joked cleverly and constantly told the girl hilarious stories from his life and the lives of his friends. Ethan knew a lot. He was smart and well-read, and also too practical. Independent living had left its mark on him. Ethan always knew exactly what to do and when to do it. With him, Veronica felt as if she were behind a stone wall. He cared for her, but in a very unobtrusive way. He also always came up with something interesting. Not just ordinary walks through downtown hand in hand, though they did that too. For example, he arranged a date on the roof of an old water tower, where breathtaking views opened over the evening city. Another time, he took her to a real waterfall only about 2 miles outside town. Veronica had not even suspected that such beauty existed in their area. Ethan even taught Veronica how to drive. For that, they went out beyond the suburbs and drove along empty country roads in Ethan's used car. It was amazing. Ethan turned out to be a good instructor. The previous teacher from driving school had not managed the task and had asked Nikki to try again a little later. Ethan taught Nikki to drive easily and naturally. In short, Veronica fell in love for the first time in her life, and forever. The girl was 100% sure about that forever. Ethan was unlike anyone she had ever known. Nikki could not believe she had met such a person, perfect, flawless, the best in the world. And he, this prince, had fallen in love with her. At first, her girlfriends snorted. They did not like that Ethan lived in a cheap room, worked as an engineer at the steel plant, and drove an old car. But after they got to know him better, the girls were delighted with Veronica's new boyfriend. He charmed them too. Her friends admitted that Veronica was lucky, and after that, it seemed Veronica fell even more deeply in love with Ethan. Of course, Veronica told her parents about the changes in her personal life. At first, her father was happy for his daughter, seeing her so joyful and light, but he advised her not to get carried away. "You're young," he said. "Today you like one guy, tomorrow you'll like another. The main thing is, if anything happens, any problem at all, tell me immediately. I won't let anyone hurt you." But later, when it became clear that Veronica's relationship with Ethan was more than serious, Victor Miller grew worried. He began asking his daughter more and more questions about her young man. When he realized Ethan was far from their circle, he became wary. Veronica did not like that. "Sweetheart, you understand that unequal relationships are always doomed to fail. Dad, you're thinking with outdated and very stupid ideas. You simply don't understand life yet. It's one thing when a man marries a girl from a poor family. It's completely different when a woman is wealthier and more successful than her life partner. Whether he wants to or not, a man will feel diminished, and in the end, his woman will suffer. There are many stories like that. That's only because you don't know Ethan," his daughter argued. "He's such a person. You'll definitely like him, you'll see. Yes, by the way, it's time we met your admirer." Veronica dreaded that meeting. She was afraid her parents would not understand her choice, and she worried about Ethan. Surely he would feel awkward and stiff during this inspection. But there was no way out. She and Ethan already had a very serious relationship. Things were moving toward a wedding. Meeting the parents under such circumstances had become necessary. Everything went almost perfectly. Ethan was himself, a charming young man, smiling and engaging. He easily found topics of conversation that interested both Veronica's mother and father, and he could support any discussion. Veronica was proud of Ethan and kept glancing at her father from time to understand what impression her chosen man was making on him. She was not worried about her mother at all. She could see that Linda liked Ethan very, very much. Her father's face, however, kept a neutral expression. Nikki could read nothing in it. But when Ethan left, Victor Miller invited his daughter to have a serious conversation. That was exactly when Veronica and Victor Miller quarreled. For the first time in a very long time, her father had always treated his daughter with indulgence. He tried to accept her opinion and listen to her. Most often, things ended with him accepting his daughter's point of view. But not this time. "I didn't like him," he said. "He is a dangerous man. He is false through and through." "What?" Veronica was stunned. "I've never met anyone better than him. Do you even know how many trials life has thrown at him, and he still stayed so kind, cheerful, and good? He loves me. He is hiding a lot from you and trying to seem good. But he himself..." "Daughter, listen to me, please. Don't continue this relationship." And then Veronica lost control. She said rude things to her father and, slamming the door loudly, went to her room. Ethan's introduction to her parents was supposed to go completely differently. Veronica had counted on another result, especially since she had not yet told her father something very important. Recently, Ethan had proposed to her, in his own style, very unexpectedly and spectacularly. They were walking through downtown, and suddenly, children they met along the way began giving Veronica flowers, 1 rose each, until she had a huge bouquet. The girl kept looking at Ethan questioningly. Of course, she understood whose doing it was. Then suddenly, as if out of nowhere, violinists appeared, young men in beautiful concert suits. They began playing a tender melody. Ethan smiled at Veronica and held out a ring in a little red velvet box. "Will you marry me? The most beautiful girl in the world?" How could Veronica refuse him? Her heart nearly jumped out of her chest with joy and admiration. No one ever, had done such beautiful and romantic things for her. And now there had been this meeting with her parents. Her father was against Ethan. Of course, he would be horrified when he found out they were getting married. How was she even supposed to tell him? Well, that did not matter. She and Ethan were adults. They had everything they needed to start family life. They even had the condo, the very one Veronica's father had given her, so no one could order them around, not even her father. Although, of course, Veronica did not want to quarrel with her parents at all. She even cried in her room because her father did not understand her. Nothing like that had ever happened between them before. Her father, more than anyone, had always sensed his daughter's feelings and guessed her mood. They had always been on the same side, the most united, close-knit team. But what could she do? Veronica had already decided everything. Now she would pull herself together, call Ethan, and ask him to take a walk with her, at least through the park. Ethan would surely calm her down. With him, every problem seemed insignificant. He would find a way out of this situation. He definitely would. And Ethan really did understand everything and found a way out. "Don't worry. We'll still get married, even if your parents are against it. But I'll still try to make peace with your father. It's not right to start family life with a fight with your closest relatives." Ethan truly tried to establish contact with his future father-in-law. He came to Veronica's house again, with a bouquet of flowers for her mother and a bottle of whiskey for her father. Veronica was beside him. The young couple planned to announce their decision, especially since they had already applied for their marriage license and now knew the exact wedding date. Ethan was sweet and charming, and also as tactful and polite as possible. Of course, the young couple's announcement stunned the parents. Even Linda looked confused, though she was the one who liked Ethan. "It's so soon. You're still so young, sweetheart. Maybe you should wait?" "Mom, wait for what?" Veronica sighed. "Everything is already decided." "Don't worry," Ethan immediately responded. "I love your daughter, and I'll do everything for her happiness." He spoke sincerely and convincingly, but Victor Miller looked at him with his eyes narrowed unpleasantly. Still, he did not say anything bad to his future son-in-law. He behaved respectfully and calmly. "Well," her father said to his daughter when they were alone, "you are legally an adult, and I truly can't forbid you from doing anything, though I still don't like this Ethan of yours. There is something vaguely unpleasant about him. It's strange that you and your mother don't see it, and forbidden fruit is sweet. Maybe soon you'll understand for yourself what your precious Ethan really is. But if I try to forbid you, that will only make him more attractive in your eyes." "As if he could be any more attractive," Veronica said with a delighted smile. "Daddy, I'm so glad you agree with my decision. Daughter, remember this. If something suddenly isn't right, you come straight to me. You should never be ashamed or afraid. I will always understand you and support you. Know that." "You're the best daddy in the world," Veronica exclaimed, just like when she was little. Victor Miller looked at his daughter and smiled, but his heart was easing for his beloved child, almost as it had been during that difficult period when his little girl was fading away. Now, Veronica was clearly not safe either. Victor knew people and had enough life experience and intuition to understand that something was clearly wrong with this handsome Ethan. Veronica entered the house where she had grown up, the house of her childhood and youth, with joy and lightness in her heart. Her father had asked her to come over for dinner after class. For some reason, he had clarified that his daughter should come alone without Ethan. That, of course, upset her a little. Her father still had not wholeheartedly accepted Nikki's future husband, but that was all right. With time, everything would smooth out. Her father would see what a wonderful person Ethan was, get to know him better, and perhaps they would even become friends. In any case, her father had called Veronica that day between her classes at the university and asked her to come. The girl had even been glad. Ever since she and Ethan had started living together in her condo like a real married couple, visits to her parents' home, where Nikki was always expected and where everyone missed her, had acquired a special charm. On the way, Veronica bought her mother's favorite cake, imagining how the three of them would spend the evening over tea and pleasant conversations about the upcoming wedding, preparations for which were already in full swing. Veronica ran lightly up the steps of her parents' front porch and opened the door with her key. "Oh, my daughter is here." Her father was already hurrying down the stairs toward her. It seemed to Nikki that he had been waiting for her with enormous impatience. That looked a little surprising. Usually, her father remained calm and unruffled in every situation. Veronica thought she would be invited to the table, but her mother only shook her head. "Talk to your father first. He has news for you." Her mother looked worried. Then again, for Linda, that was almost her usual state. Nikki shrugged and followed her father into his office. He closed the door, sat down behind his desk, and gestured for Nikki to sit in the chair across from him. The girl did so. "Dad, you're almost scaring me," Veronica said with a smile. "What's going on, finally?" "Nikki, you know you are my most precious treasure, the person I love most. The meaning of my life, if you want the truth." Veronica nodded. Yes, she had never doubted her father's feelings. "Try to understand me correctly," her father said in a soft voice, choosing his words carefully. "Try to understand me. I simply couldn't give you to a man I know absolutely nothing about. That's dangerous, after all." "Please don't start," Veronica sighed. Now her father would again begin talking his daughter out of marriage. But everything had already been decided. Even the wedding invitations had been sent to relatives and friends. "Please listen," her father said with a gentle smile. "I knew absolutely nothing about him. It all looked suspicious. He appeared out of nowhere in our city. No home, no past, no family. Isn't that strange? You know Ethan only had his mom. She died. His relatives took the apartment. He was left without housing, so he decided to start a new life in a city where his profession was in demand. In our city. I know that version. Still, I tried to find at least some information about him. And here's the thing. In the town he supposedly comes from, a person with his information never lived. In fact, a person like him basically does not exist." "You investigated him?" Veronica asked, outraged. "Not personally. I hired professionals. They checked Ethan from top to bottom. It was as if he had not existed before the moment he appeared in our city. Then suddenly he appeared, already an adult, educated, with a tragic life story behind him." "Dad, why would you do that?" Veronica threw up her hands indignantly. "This is nonsense. I saw his driver's license myself, and he works as an engineer at the plant. That means he has a diploma, too. Documents are not that hard to make these days if you have money and know who to contact. Ethan has no money, but he tries very hard so we can live decently. He even takes extra shifts at the plant. Do you know how tired he gets? Instead of helping the man your daughter chose, you're digging under him." "Yes," Victor Miller said thoughtfully, looking at Veronica with concern. "He has worked on you thoroughly. A professional, I'll give him that." "What are you even talking about?" Veronica was growing angrier by the second. "Why are you messing with my nerves? Why all this? I love Ethan. He's a wonderful person." "Daughter," Victor Miller interrupted carefully. "I understand you won't believe my words, then listen to this." Victor Miller turned the laptop screen toward his daughter. She saw an open folder with a single file in it, an audio file. "What is that supposed to be?" Veronica looked at the file warily. "It's a recording of Ethan's phone conversation. The people I hired put a bug in his car." "What?" There was no limit to Veronica's outrage. She jumped up from the chair, ready to run out of her father's office immediately, and slam the door as loudly as possible. But Victor Miller stopped her with one sharp word. "Veronica." The girl exhaled heavily and turned around, her eyes flashed with fury. "Veronica." Victor Miller approached his daughter and took her by the shoulders. "Just listen to the recording. You'll understand everything." "I can't believe it," the girl said, nearly crying. "I can't believe you acted this way." It's dishonest, vile, low. You are the most precious thing I have, the man repeated, stroking his daughter's hair. I had to make sure your fiancé wasn't hiding a knife behind his back. I saw that something was wrong with this Ethan. I couldn't allow you to marry him, especially because, obviously, you're under his influence right now. Please listen to this recording. If it doesn't convince you, then I'll apologize and, I swear, I'll never bring this up again. You need to know something about Ethan before you marry him. That would be right. That would be honest. Fine, Veronica said with a nod and a loud sob. The tears that had been gathering in her eyes finally broke free. Victor Miller nodded, went to the computer, and clicked the audio file. The office filled with the voice Veronica considered dear and beloved. The voice of her fiancé, almost already her husband, the voice she could never confuse with any other. The girl is fully ready, Ethan was saying to someone. No doubts at all. She fell in love with me, trusts me, looks at me with puppy eyes. I'm jealous, a muffled female voice said. Ethan was speaking to her on speakerphone because he was driving. The phone was apparently lying on the passenger seat. Be jealous. I enjoy it, Ethan replied. I'll be at your wedding, the woman said again. I'll dress up as a waitress or something. I want to see it. Alyssa, that's too much, Ethan said, tensing a little. You could ruin everything. Remember how it was in Dallas? Everything almost fell apart back then. You're too emotional. But you don't complain about that. No, of course not. From his voice, it was clear that Ethan was smiling. And still, this girl is so young and pretty, the woman continued. It's one thing when you're working some old lady, but this one is like a little nymph. You know I only need her condo, Ethan said, calming his companion in a firm, confident voice. We'll get married now. I'll ask her to sell the condo, supposedly to help me start a business. The girl will agree. She's still completely naive. Her daddy suspects something, though. But by the time he wakes up, there won't be a trace of us left. Same as always. Arthur, I miss you so much. Can I come? Just for a couple of days? Tell her you have a lot of work. Or pretend you need to go on a business trip and come to me. Not now, Alyssa. I have to be with her all the time and keep my finger on the pulse. We're close to the finish line. We can't ruin everything. Stay where you are. I'll come as soon as it's over. After that, the conversation moved to other things. Alyssa complained to Ethan, or rather to Arthur, as it turned out, that money was already running short, about roaches in the motel, and about the local manager hitting on her. With that last statement, she was clearly trying to make him jealous. Judging by everything, those two were very close and had known each other for a long time. At last, Victor Miller stopped the recording. In general, there's nothing else interesting there. Well, did you hear? Veronica nodded. There were tears in her eyes. The blood had drained from her face. Her world, her perfect, bright, sunny world, was collapsing in a matter of seconds. The girl felt nauseated. Her head spun. Seeing his daughter's condition, her father handed her a glass of water. How are you? Fine, Veronica lied. I didn't understand anything at all. Nothing. That was my first thought too when I heard this recording. I didn't understand anything except that this Ethan, whom the woman called Arthur, is a liar and wants to take your condo. That's exactly why he initiated such a fast wedding with you. Of course, I didn't stop with that information. Naturally, I was afraid for you, because you were living with some con man and liar. But he wouldn't have done anything to you before the wedding. That was his goal, an official marriage to you, the owner of expensive property. But after that, who knows how he might have treated his young wife. Cold goosebumps ran in a crowd down Veronica's back. She suddenly understood that she would not go home to her condo today under any circumstances, because there, in that condo, was a completely foreign, unknown man. Victor Miller seemed to read his daughter's thoughts. And you won't go back there again. I now have all the information about him. That is enough to, well, let me tell you everything in order. All right. Veronica slowly nodded. Of course, after hearing the recording from inside Ethan's car, Victor Miller decided to dig further. He hired a private investigator who, according to the reviews, specialized precisely in untangling cases like this. And it turned out that Arthur, who had been introducing himself as Ethan for so long, was a man the police were looking for across the country. He was a romance scammer whose victims numbered in the dozens. women of all ages all over the country. Those women had one thing in common: loneliness, no personal life at the moment Arthur appeared, and possession of some kind of assets. For the most part, Arthur took their savings, running the same scheme again and again. He managed to leave some of his victims without housing, and in certain cases even without their only home. Afterward, they literally ended up without a roof over their heads. Arthur presented himself as a young, talented man, hardworking, goal-oriented, and head over heels in love with his chosen woman. If there was one thing Arthur knew how to do, it was pretend to be in love. He had also learned, virtuoso that he was, how to make women fall in love with him. The man possessed a kind of social talent. Perhaps he would have been a brilliant actor if he had chosen an honest path. But Arthur preferred a faster and more reliable way to make money. A long career path with uncertain prospects seemed boring to him. He did not want to wait. Women were crazy about Arthur. They literally lost their heads over him and did everything he said. Among his victims were mostly older women. Usually, by the time they met the scammer, they already had failed relationships behind them. These women were disappointed, felt unwanted, and believed they no longer had the right to dream of a personal life. And then Arthur appeared on the stage, dazzling, charming, kind, and so in love. He got what he wanted and simply disappeared. Arthur changed names, fields of work, and life stories. For each victim he searched for and found his own approach. Arthur wore masks and played roles. And helping him with that was the woman he apparently truly loved, Alyssa. The very woman Arthur had been talking to on the phone in the car that day. Alyssa did a great deal of work. She searched for victims and gathered information about them. Arthur prepared carefully for each job, learning everything he possibly could about the target. He practiced a strictly individual approach. Only that way could success be achieved. Mostly, they were adult women, her father told his daughter, explaining the terrible truth about her fiancé. Many women, dozens. Arthur preferred to act quickly. He didn't take apartments or houses from all of them. Some took out loans for him. Some handed over their last savings or even pawned family jewelry. The payoff wasn't always as large as what he planned in your case. Arthur was not above anything. And by the way, we only know about the women who went to the police. How many women were too ashamed to report him? How many still feel shame, as if they were guilty of something, as if being the victim of a scammer is shameful? No one is protected from that. Arthur and Alyssa grew up in foster care. That was where they met. Their life was not easy. Somehow they survived, holding on to each other. And when they aged out of the system, they married right away. But the young family did not have much money. At the same time, both of them dreamed of a beautiful life. The ocean, beaches, expensive clothes, luxury cars. But how were they supposed to achieve all that? Arthur was smart and talented. School had always come easily to him. If he had landed in a good family during childhood, he could have achieved a lot with such gifts. But the time had been lost. At least, that was what Arthur believed. College no longer seemed possible for him. A high-paying job did not seem possible either. The young man tried to start a small business, but it did not work. Then one day, he and Alyssa watched a documentary about romance scammers. The main message for girls and women was this: be on guard, do not fall into the trap. That was why the film had been made. But it had an entirely different effect on Arthur and Alyssa. They decided it was an excellent scheme, and so it began. At first, it was small and accidental income. Arthur and Alyssa practiced and tested their strength. Everything worked out for them, and sometimes it was laughably easy. With time, the couple's appetite grew noticeably. Arthur and Alyssa traveled to different cities across the country. Now they had money, so their schemes became bolder, riskier, and much more profitable. At various times, Arthur introduced himself as a poor student, an unrecognized scientific genius, or a beginning entrepreneur. He slipped easily into roles and enjoyed it. Alyssa, strangely enough, did not feel jealous of her lover's victims. She saw them only as objects. Only with Veronica, a beautiful young girl, did unpleasant thoughts arise in her. She wanted the wedding to take place as soon as possible, and she wanted Arthur to pull off the condo scheme and come back to her. The couple planned to celebrate a successful deal with a trip to an expensive resort overseas. Veronica's condo was worth a great deal of money. After this job, They would be able to avoid working for a long time. That was what the couple was striving for, to eventually save up enough money to never work again and simply live for pleasure. But they were still far from that. This is horrible," Veronica whispered. After the recording she had heard with her own ears, she believed every word her father said. But none of it fit in her head. Nikki was in pain, deep pain, and she was afraid. "Of course it's horrible," Victor Miller agreed, especially since some victims lost the last thing they had. But Arthur and his partner weren't especially moved by that. The main thing for them was to fill their pockets. It feels like compassion is completely foreign to them. Some victims reported him to the police. Gradually, it became clear that the same man was operating again and again. They began trying to track Arthur down, but it was very difficult. He constantly changed hunting grounds, names, and even his appearance a little. By the way, Veronica had believed Ethan was only a few years older than she was. It turned out the age difference was more than 10 years. The man simply looked young, and over the years of his criminal work, he had learned to pretend masterfully. When she heard that fact, Veronica shivered with sudden cold. She was frightened again. She had lived with Ethan, a good, open, sincere guy, had made plans, had loved him, and it turned out he was an adult and experienced romance scammer, a professional in his craft. "They also told me in more detail how Arthur found his way to you," Victor Miller said quietly. "With you, everything was simple. You're very young, very emotional, and open. So at first, you seemed to Arthur and Alyssa like the perfect target. Yes, target. That is what they call their victims among themselves. In one thing, Arthur had not lied to Veronica. He had chosen her city, in truth, completely by chance. After finishing yet another job in Cedar Falls, the couple showed up at the bus station. They had to leave, and as quickly as possible, before the victim realized she was exactly that, a victim, and went to the police. Though Arthur strongly doubted that Jean, the principal of the local high school, would file a report. It would be such a blow to her reputation. What if her colleagues found out? Or worse, the students and their parents? No, Jean would not survive such disgrace, so most likely she would not want any noise. But caution came first. Arthur and Alyssa bought tickets to the city whose bus was leaving soonest. That was how they ended up in Veronica's hometown. The second stage was finding a victim. Alyssa usually handled that. She looked through dating ads, walked along busy streets, and listened to people's conversations. She met Veronica entirely by chance, too. It happened in a cafe, where the girl was excitedly telling her friends about the stylish coffee table she had found for her condo. Alyssa noticed the girl and began following her. Little by little, the woman learned practically everything about Veronica. What kind of family she came from, where her condo was located, how much it was worth, what the girl liked, and where she usually went. Alyssa definitely knew how to gather information. Then Arthur himself entered the game, temporarily turning into Ethan. "We know the main things from Arthur and Alyssa's conversations," Victor said. They were being listened to. They often discuss their crimes, savor the details, and are clearly proud of each other. It seems there is real love between them. My people learned some things by conducting a more thorough investigation. In any case, now we have a great deal of evidence and testimony, and soon, the criminal pair will be handed over to the authorities. They don't suspect anything. That is the most satisfying part. Veronica nodded, but she saw absolutely nothing satisfying in this story. Arthur staged your meeting at the club. He paid one guy to play the attacker. Arthur understood that if he fought off a criminal and saved a young girl from him, he would definitely win that girl's heart, especially since he himself was so handsome and charming, and he knew that perfectly well. "I never would have thought that incident at the club was staged," Veronica said, shaking her head. Even now, the memory of the stranger's strong embrace, like a vice, sent goosebumps down her back. "Oh, Arthur is a master of staging things. One of my specialists found the guy who took part in that circus, your supposed kidnapper. He has already given testimony to the police. Another piece of evidence for the pile. By the way, there in the club, Ethan quietly slipped something into your drink that made you get drunk fast. He had enough time when you went off to dance. That was why you couldn't immediately fight off the attacker and couldn't act appropriately, scream, or start defending yourself. It was all part of the plan. And I fell in love with him, Veronica said slowly. And you fell in love with him, Victor Miller repeated. I think I still love him, Veronica admitted. I believe you, but still. Am I really such a No, Arthur is a real professional. Much older and experienced women fell under his spell. What can be said about a young, sincere girl? You were the perfect and easy victim for Arthur. But he failed to account for one thing. You have a father who loves you and won't let anyone hurt you. Victor fell silent for a moment. You know, it's time to tell you something else. What else? Veronica looked at her father anxiously. You're old enough to understand. Back then, many years ago, when your mother told me she was expecting a child, I got scared. I wasn't sure I wanted to build a family with your mother. I wasn't ready for two children, so I simply ran away. I was a coward. Then you were born, and nothing changed. I felt nothing for the baby. I simply sent your mother money for your support so I could consider myself a decent man. That was all. Veronica stared at him, not believing her ears. And then, before you were even a year old, it happened. You got sick. Your mother turned to me. Where else could she run for help? She came to me with you in her arms. You looked at me, and something inside me turned over. Victor, who until then had felt no warm feelings for his daughter, suddenly understood that he was afraid to lose this fragile, sweet little creature. In his soul, almost in one instant, an enormous, all-consuming feeling was born, love for his child. Along with it came fear, sticky and cold. Victor fought for his daughter's life. He used his connections, shook up every doctor he could reach. Veronica was treated in the United States and overseas, but nothing helped. The little girl faded before the eyes of both desperate parents. And then I took you to Miss Kathy, Victor said. She whispered over you and handed you back to your mother. Then she and I spoke privately. She said the child felt the discord in the family and was trying, in whatever way she could, to bring her parents together. She said nothing would help you until your mother and I became husband and wife, a family, and started living together. So that same day, I proposed to her. By then, I had already understood that I really loved her. I loved both of you. I swore that not a hair would fall from your head again. Because of my cowardice, you almost died. I still feel that guilt. I won't let Arthur or anyone else hurt you. Veronica looked at her father, unable to believe what she was hearing. She had thought their strong, happy family had always existed. It turned out it had not been that way at all. I tried to protect and shield you both all my life, and I succeeded. Then suddenly this Ethan appeared. I noticed the falseness in him right away, but you seemed to have rose-colored glasses over your eyes. You didn't listen to anything, and I saw that your fiancé could not be trusted. Now, after what I have told you, after what I have confessed, you should understand me better. I did not interfere in your personal life for no reason. I saw that my daughter, whom I had once nearly lost because of my own carelessness and stupidity, was in danger again. I had to act like this, somewhat unceremoniously. But you must admit, it was not for nothing. Not for nothing, Veronica nodded. Now Arthur and Alyssa will be taken very soon. There is more than enough evidence against them. You will not go back there. It is already dangerous, and there is no need anymore. Everything will be all right now. Veronica nodded in agreement. She suddenly realized that she had not truly loved Ethan after all. She had simply been blinded by his outer shine and deafened by beautiful words, as if she had really been under some kind of hypnosis. Now the fog had almost lifted, which meant her father, as always, was right. Everything really would be all right. And if this story made you think about trust, family, and the quiet ways love protects us, let me know in the comments what you would have done in Veronica's place, or whether you've ever seen someone fall for a beautiful lie. If this story moved you, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one.